This video is brought to you by viewers like you.
Hi, and welcome to Pokemon Ecology. Today we're going to be looking at Lethal Company. If you missed the community post, we ran into an issue with the development of the phylogenetic tree video and are doing this instead for this month. I started playing Lethal Company, initially terrified at the horror game, until I screamed at a baboon hunk and it started backing up. After checking the logs and seeing a scientific name tied to the creatures, my fear left me. These were wild animals. I love wild animals. I'd much rather run into an angry thumper than an angry bear. Starting with the animal that started this journey, the baboon hawk, Papio vulturius, literally baboon hawk. These guys are actually in the family and genus of baboons. They just have very peculiar anatomy. The development of a beak is unusual. The turtles have them. The horns are made of keratin, nail material, instead of bone, according to the logs. But that's just how horns are. Antlers are made of bones, and horns are made of keratin. The horns often break and regrow quickly, meaning they're likely not very durable, regardless of the force that the baboon hawk is using, despite what the log may have you believe. Unless a lot of effort is put into horn growth, which I doubt considering they're 8 feet tall, they're probably not built very sturdily. The wings are used for intimidation. Makes sense with the animals in the area, and protection from the elements. These planets are pretty harsh, and the weather is nasty, so it is essentially a jacket is a helpful evolution. Apes in real life have some very strange adaptations that came about very quickly, like gibbons' bellows, so the wings don't stand out as unusual to me. These animals are territorial and pack-forming, likely coming from their ape ancestry, and are reinforced by competition on this planet. The frequent noise generation for intimidation does end them up as common combatants with the eyeless dogs that share the surface with them. You can even observe territorial disputes between the two in-game as the day slowly comes to an end. It's strange that they lack tails though. Their relatives in the baboon genus have tails, so what happened with these guys? The locusts are less interesting, simply behaving similar to our locusts. However, it's curious that these smaller swarms exist, considering that conditions for locust swarming in real life usually entail intense overpopulation of an area. Manticoils are a type of corvid or crow.
There's my druid magic at work.
That somehow developed an extra set of wings. This is so puzzling to me because bonus limbs are so incredibly difficult to evolve. The back wings are used to stabilize at low speeds, so perhaps they're vestigial or some sort of pseudo-wing, acting like a glider more than anything. They eat small insects and rodents, the latter of which likely experienced booming populations in the initial stages of human development on these planets, as well as in the final stages of said development, as new, predatorless habitat was created for them. Considering the floor-spanning slimes, they're probably no longer present in the facility halls anymore. By the way, if you're wondering why life would so easily adapt to urban living like this, perhaps these planets are much older, thus subject to a lot more erosion, resulting in complex caves. The nebula is referred to as both the Thistle Nebula and, in the Bunker Spider entry, the Fading Nebula. Circuit bees curiously construct their hives on the ground. We have bees that construct nests in the ground, but this specific behavior is unique. These bees generate electricity from friction from their fur and their wings. This most likely makes them more potent against the threats they experience, but these threats, according to the bestiary, are mostly rodents and some larger mammals. Granted, these are written by a guy who works for this company, so I doubt he's possessing much biological aptitude. Eyeless dogs are a member of Saeptivus, a non-existent class, the same separation as mammals, reptiles, fish, etc., that very roughly translates to separation, rail, enclosure, and similar, likely a reference to some internal biology. The breathing sounds like lion roars, hardly, leading them to the scientific name Leocaicus, literally lion blind. They're endurance hunters much like ourselves and wolves. As these animals are blind, they likely rely on causing prey to flee with their intimidating appearance. Their signature roars when they lunge help call pack members from far away, who are out acting as scouts for their own territory for this hunting style, further reducing the prey's chance of escape as they're quickly surrounded, vaguely mimicking real-life wolf hunting tactics. I do wonder what might have caused the reduction in eyes. This only really happens when animals are deprived of sight like in caves or underground. Forest keepers, which I call giants and the player base calls germas, are fascinating.
Slide to the left, slide to the right.
They're very curious about the world, putting objects they don't understand into their mouths like children or goats, leading me to believe that much of their bodies have dulled feeling. This may be a defense against creatures like circuit bees, whose zones are often tread upon by such large creatures. They bear markings on their fronts and backs that resemble eyes. This is incredibly common in the animal kingdom and is used to ward off threats. Them being on the front and back implies to me that they're simultaneously used for intimidation or mating as well as defense, perhaps threatening forest giants sneaking up on them to attack. Spikes and bumps form on them as they age. This could be a number of things and is most likely akin to a cyst. They're theorized to gain energy through a process very similar to photosynthesis. This leads me to wonder how efficient this process is for their lives, as the days on this planet are incredibly short. The final animal we'll be talking about before delving into the facility is the Earth Leviathan. They're in the family Piscicolidae. that of the jawless leeches. According to the bestiary, they've evolved into more of a predator role than that of a parasite. They sense vibrations and charge right away. This can also eat forest keepers, and I'd guess that's the intended prey species for these guys, according to fictional biology and not lore. Up first for the inside creatures is the spore lizard. I actually could not find one to save my life from start to finish of video creation, so there's no footage from me. These guys are in the alligator family despite their crazy looking morphology and herbivorous diet. Their scientific name is lizard gathers, likely referencing the mushrooms gathering in their tail. Them being non-aggressive is somewhat alligator, as crocodilians tend not to hunt animals that have seen them. There are even videos of golfers smacking gators off the field. However, their behavior isn't quite in line with herbivorous animals. Instead of running, they attempt a threat display before spraying spores, attracted to chemicals in their tail to smokescreen foes, thus spreading more fungus. A textbook example of mutualism. The fungus, Lycoperdon perlatum, is actually the real-life puffball. Also, the tails are harvested for medicine. This could be holistic like alligator scales, or it could be related to the tail chemicals. Snail fleas are in the order of centipedes.
Oh no! Oh, no! Well, there goes our grant money.
Contrary to the name, centipedes don't have 100 legs, just around 30, but these guys are still lacking. These guys string themselves to the ceiling using silk. Centipedes in real life don't produce any silk, but they do produce a sticky toxic secretion, which likely developed into a silk-like substance. I'm not sure why though, as venom seems particularly applicable in these environments. Instead, they fall off the ceiling and choke people. The scientific name roughly means evil intent centipede, likely referencing the strangling of prey over the more direct envenomation. Bunker spiders are real cuties. Their chelicerae, fangs, are so large, I thought they were extra legs. In biology, it's often that the larger a body part is, the more important that part is. Looking at the other creatures here, it's pretty clear why they have massive fangs. Curiously, their logbook mentions that the boat made its trip around the Thistle Nebula. Could this have been some sort of Noah's Ark event that spread species around the nebula to start human colonies? Also, this logbook has a cute Darwin reference. They're largely normal spiders, and large normal spiders, so there's not too much to mention. It is curious that all these animals are evolving so rapidly. This measly several hundred years is crazy. Animals that have been separate for far longer than that are still perfectly compatible. The question remains, why? Thumpers are hefty beasts found creeping the halls of these planets. They're so named for the thumping sound their huge arms make as they drag themselves around. They drag themselves like so because when they're born, their largely unfunctional legs, that they're likely undeveloping, get stuck in eggshells and they must eat them to escape. As insane as this sounds, it's not entirely unreasonable. A creature in this environment is likely hunting formidable prey that can fight back. By eating its own legs, it's not only stimulating arm muscle development much earlier, but it also provides temporary nutrition until the creature can hunt on its own. They're in the order Chondrichthyes, the same order as cartilaginous fish like sharks. Ignoring the implications of that for now, their genus is Pistrus, meaning sea monster. Their species is Savus, meaning savage. Going back to the shark relations, it's strange that these guys have arms and fingers and feet that they have to eat off if they are going to be related to sharks. Massive differences like this usually result in different classification. Considering their ability to speed in straight lines and difficulty rounding corners, I'd imagine they were built for life outside, but their entry states that they best exemplify the rapid speciation happening in the nebula. Perhaps life outside evolved too aggressively, too quickly, so they live in the long hallways of the facilities. Hoarding bugs are insects that gather loot from around the facilities back to their nest. Interestingly, they're in the order of bees and ants. Could this gathering behavior be a genetic relic alongside their sparse but present nesting and hive habits? This nest decoration behavior is actually something we see in real life, in particular with the bowerbird, who uses many man-made objects to decorate their nests all sorts of colors. The bowerbird uses this to attract mates, and that may be the same case with the hoarding bug. These huge antennae are likely how they keep aware of threats in the facility. Large body parts in animals usually means a focus on that element. Think humans' large brain cases, so large eyes and antennae mean a focus on their senses. My only criticism is a lack of the third set of legs and proboscis. Major deviations like this usually cause animals to be classified as something totally different. The size doesn't bug me as much. With such large threats, it makes sense that they develop in size. It also means the environment is more oxygenated, as insects don't breathe exactly. They rely on air flowing through their body. Real quick, hybrideers are large masses of eukaryotes that stick together roaming the halls for food. Likely, they form these large masses to be able to consume the larger prey and objects as, like our archaea, they're able to eat some strange stuff for food. Fortunately, I don't think these guys actually eat any of the scrap. Finally, we come to brackens. These guys are probably my favorite. They're named after a fern due to their leaf-like structures, and they're theorized to be related to forest keepers, which makes sense considering these guys' leaf structures may be remnants from their shared ancestry with forest keepers, going from photosynthetic structures to something more like a rattlesnake's rattle, as they make a shimmy noise whenever brackens decide to charge. This of course being done because now they live inside and they can't utilize their photosynthesis. The second reason is that these guys are described as highly intelligent, and forest keepers are described as intelligent and curious like a 5-year-old human. In the facility, we've seen so many ways that animals deal with prey and predators: fleeing, swarming, blind violence, and finally, intelligence, leading these guys to stealth. When I was at work, I was describing these guys to my coworkers. They creep up on you, but back off if sighted, but they charge you if you stare because they realize you're challenging them or you're not a threat. They immediately replied, "Oh, like a tiger," and I eagerly started this script that night. Finally, these guys' rapid decay when they're killed is likely an evolutionary tactic to deprive predators of food, and of all things to do this in real life, it's oak trees. They have significant drops and rises in acorn counts every other year to starve as many nut-eating animals as they can, so the year after will have far more acorns succeed and sprout. Their scientific name is Raicc folium, roughly meaning ravenous, omnivorous, extortionist leaf.